Okay, so here's the deal. Electric pianos have this cool functionality called MIDI. What this means is that I can connect my piano up to my computer, and then I can code a quick program which tells me what key I'm pressing on the piano. Each key has a certain value, and when you press it, the computer returns that value. Now, if you've done some game development, you'll quickly realize that this is very similar to what keyboards do. Each key on a keyboard also just has some value, and if it's pressed, the computer knows that the key with that value is being pressed. So this got me thinking, could I make a game out of this? The original idea was to make a game controlled using a piano, and since pianos make music, you'd also be making some cool music alongside playing. Did I accomplish that? Well, the first part, yes. The second part, not so much. It's kind of difficult to make a game where the music you use to control it actually sounds good. Nonetheless, I still want to go over the gist of it, since maybe it will inspire some other people to make their own game, which may be better than my own one. Anyway, so here's the story. Python has a library called Pygame, and Pygame has a module which allows you to receive MIDI inputs. There's some basic scripts online which set this up, and you can build upon them. So the first question is, how will the game actually be controlled? I wanted to make sure that this game's control system was unique, and so it wasn't just going to be a simple, if you press this note, the player goes to the left, and if you press this note, the player goes to the right kind of deal, because I think that's rather pointless, and you could just use a keyboard, making the piano rather redundant. A better idea would be to, for example, use different key combinations for different actions. So this pattern would make you go to the left, and this chord would make you attack. But this just seems too complicated and like it would be a memorizational nightmare. Maybe it would be cool for a large-scale game, but I just wanted something small. In fact, I chose to make one of those infinite scrolling platformers, since I thought that would be a fun little project. The control system I eventually settled for was pretty basic. I used intervals. The point is, you press one key, and then while you're still holding it, you press another key. And that key is in some position relative to this root one, so if you press a key which is 2 notes higher than the root, your player moves 2 tiles to the right. And now if you keep holding this root note, and you play a note which is lower down, so for example one which is 3 notes lower, your player is going to move 3 tiles to the left. MIDI also allows you to find out the velocity, or rather the loudness of the note, and I decided to use this for jumping. So the harder you press the keys, the higher you jump. Playing them quietly barely gets you off the ground, but smashing them makes you fly. Now, musicians out there are probably a bit puzzled right now, since a while ago I said that these 2 notes are separated by 2 keys, which isn't completely true, since we also have these top keys. This makes the real distance between the notes C and E to be 4 notes, and originally this is how the game worked, so this interval counted as 4 notes, so it would move you 4 spaces. Since these keys are given ascending values with no regard for whether they are black or white keys. However, this made eyeballing jumps quite complicated, so I decided to make the game in C. Not that C, I mean C major. To explain this a bit, you usually don't use all the keys on the keyboard while playing one song. Instead, each song chooses a portion of keys which sound good together, and these are called scales, and uses that. The most basic scale is the C major scale, which sounds like this. And conveniently, all the notes in the C major scale fall upon white keys. Now, implementing this was a bit complicated, and it required this really hefty one-liner. I'll be honest, I usually don't code in Python, but the possibility of this level of efficiency really does appeal to me, even though I don't really understand this line anymore looking back at it. Anyway, the way the game looks right now is rather boring, and the controls are also quite mundane. I mean, the system is there. You press a key and then press a higher or lower key and move around by doing that. But I mean, this is still rather simple. So I added a bunch of different tile types, including these spikes, which kill the player, and I also added this red lava floor, which also kills the player. Now this actually presented me with an opportunity, and that's to add chords. So I separated the keyboard into two halves. On this half, the rules that we set up until now apply. So playing an interval moves the player, but down here you play chords or harmonies or whatever suits your melody. So what happens here doesn't move the player. Now to explain chords, each scale has a different set of chords which sound good alongside it. All you have to know about chords is that they're combinations of notes which sound good when they're played at once. There are many different types of chords like major 7s, augmented chords, or sus4s, but I only used the basic triads. For the key of C major, the triads that are used along with it are predominantly the C major triad, unsurprisingly, the F major triad, the G major triad, and the A minor triad. These chords are literally the basis of most pop music, but that would be a whole nother video. Chords are built into chord progressions, which are just sequences of chords which sound good. So for example, this one, or this one. Thankfully, there's a handy diagram on the internet for how to make chord progressions, so I implemented that using just a basic tree structure. Now, if you play these chords in the left hand and add a melody played in the same scale that these chords are from in your right hand, you get a really nice tune. So now you get a chord displayed up here, and if you play notes that are in that triad using your left hand, the lava floor slows down, and if you play notes that aren't in the triad, the floor speeds up. This made the game a bit more challenging since you now have to use both hands. To increase the difficulty even more, I added some more tiles, like this one, which makes the player jump when they fall on it, and this diamond, which is akin to a point. This means that different platforms have different typical sounds. Add to this the chords or harmonies in your left hand, and you get some decent sounding music. The level generation is procedural, and the constant rising of the lava over this random world makes the game pretty stressful. Actually, that's like the only adjective I can make up for it. So far, it looks like the learning curve is just a flat line stuck at noob, so I don't know, this honestly just seems like something similar to the world's hardest game or something. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that this was a bit of a project outside of my usual comfort zone, and so it's mostly an experimental thing which didn't go as well as I thought it would. But it was fun, and even though the game doesn't sound particularly awesome, it's still quite challenging. But yeah, maybe y'all will come up with something more interesting using these concepts. Anyway, as much as I love Python, I do have to point out that Pygame is a bit annoying. The outline for this diamond looks weird. This triangle is pixelated for some reason. I had to make this text border myself. It can't even blur the screen. These are all things which, for example, JavaScript can do. Anyway, that's about it from me. Thanks for watching. If you want to see my next video or something, then see you then. Maybe I'll make something for a smart fridge.